Hey everyone, my name is Rachel and sorry for the absolute lack of videos this week. Wednesday was pretty amazing. I was in Bristol filming a couple of videos with Zoe Does Life, which was really fun, and thank you so much to her for, having me down for the day and looking after me, and it was absolutely incredible to meet her. Thursday, I was just feeling a bit drained and needed a day off. Friday, I had the worst tech problems, so I filmed a whole video which I now just kind of can't use, and it's a nightmare and blech. And then today I really did kind of need a day off because I'm not feeling too well, but I didn't want to abandon you guys, so I thought I would just come back and do something really easy and slightly self-indulgent. And I want to talk about one of my favourite things, which is books. And more than just books, I want to talk about some of my favourite books from childhood, because I didn't really have too many friends when I was in school. Like when I was young I did, but it was kind of up to the age of 11. And funnily enough, I actually have one book to talk about today, which I think is kind of half the reason I didn't have friends in secondary school, but we'll get to that. But no, when I was a kid, books were kind of my escape, they were my safe place, they were my happy place, and they've kind of continued that way into my adulthood, which is why I currently have 4 bookcases in my study. So today I just thought I'd talk about some of the books that make me happy and make me feel safe, and how even on days like today when I'm not feeling too well and I really do just want to be tucked up in bed, why these are the books that I come to and just kind of surround myself in and just like have those happy memories of. So a little bit sentimental, I know, I'm sorry, bear with me. The first book I want to talk about though is one that is really special to me, but I don't know if many people will kind of know it. It's not really like some big famous book or anything, but it is this absolutely gorgeous hardback book called Tales of Magic and Make-Believe, and it's just a gorgeous illustrated little book of kind of some of the more unknown fairy tales and stories, and some of the darker ones as well. There were quite a lot of kind of dark stories in here with magic and sorcerers and witches, and I love this book so much, and it's in very good condition for the amount of times it has been read cover to cover and just carried around with me and loved. And this was one of the last books that my granny ever bought for me before she died, which is kind of why it's so special to me. And it's one that I just kind of always want to keep with me because of the happy memories of her and of just reading this book and getting lost in fairy tales and magic. And it was books like this that kind of started my love of fantasy in general, and specifically fairy tales, and is why that as I've got older I've really started to love reading the kind of like original fairy tales. And I also love this book, which is Angela Carter's Book of Fairy Tales, and I have so many books like this that just get to the kind of heart of the original fairy tales that were so deep and dark and kind of messed up, but at the same time often taught really important lessons other than just there's a prince out there for everyone. Often they were actual lessons of, being good people and doing good things. And if you weren't a good person, you probably got your head chopped off or something like that. I don't know. But also they were messages of how sometimes the world is just a cruel place and you have to make the best of things. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Basically, all I want to say is I love this book, and it's kind of my happy book, even though it's a little bit dark for a children's book in places, and I love this so much. The next book I want to show is a really old Ladybird book, which is just as loved, but in a lot worse condition. So this is one of the really old vintage Ladybird books, which is completely lost its little side bit. A lot of the cover's very battered. And this is actually from 1956, so it's only a year younger than my mum. But basically this was one of my favourite books growing up, and I absolutely loved these Ladybird books. I loved the illustrations in them, and these are what taught me to read. I loved these so much. I read them all cover to cover. We had tons at my parents' house, but this is just one of the ones that I saved, and it's called Tootles the Taxi and Other Rhymes, and basically it's just lots of little sort of rhyming poems about different types of cars and transport, and like Minnie the Milk Float and Colin the Cattle Truck. They're all ridiculous types of vehicle that we probably don't even think about today, probably don't even teach kids about today. But I loved it because I thought it was really adorable. because one of my favourite things is that all the cars have little faces, and they're really, really cute. Also, I'm sorry, my nails are a mess. But they're really, really cute, and I loved it, and I loved the rhyming and the poems, and this was kind of one of those books that made me write all those stupid little poems as a kid. I used to write little rhyming poems and limericks and just silly things I wrote poems about snails and animals, and they weren't ever any good, but I had so much fun, and this was one of the books that kind of inspired me to do that. Except another book I want to talk about again. It's a little bit battered, but very well loved, and that is The Owl Who Was Afraid of the Dark. And I loved this so much. And it's about a little owl, this guy, who's called Plop, and he's afraid of the dark. He's only a baby owl, and his parents are trying to kind of convince him that the dark isn't scary, and he's like, oh, but you know, the dark is scary and it's mean and horrible and I don't like it. And he goes off on a little adventure, and he actually finds out that the dark, that night, can actually be all these amazing things. Dark is exciting, dark is fascinating, dark is fun. And he meets people who, they like nighttime because you can look at the stars, and they like nighttime because that's when fireworks come out, and loads of other things like that. And I don't know, it's just a kind of nice, really cute, sweet, heartwarming little story about how even though sometimes things seem big and scary, there's kind of always good things there as well. Okay, I feel like I'm getting too deep. It's just a book about teaching kids not to be afraid of the dark, but it kind of means so much more to me as well, and I love it. Next up, we're talking about some books that, this isn't my original copy from childhood. That one is still at my parents' house somewhere, I'm not sure where, but a couple of maybe a year ago or so, I was like, I really want to read these books again. I wasn't going to my parents' house for a long time because they live quite far away from me up north. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to go out and buy them. And I bought the Faraway Tree books by Enid Blyton. So Enid Blyton was always a favourite of mine as a kid. Even though as I got older I found out that Enid Blyton wasn't a very nice woman. She was pretty mean to her husband and kids, and she just wasn't kind of the nice, lovely person she seems in her writing, which was a real shame. But that doesn't matter, I still loved her books. Some of my favourites were the Amelia Jane ones. Amelia Jane, the naughtiest girl in the world, she was so cheeky. And I loved the Faraway Tree ones, obviously. I loved Famous Five. I never really got into the Secret Seven books, but I know they were quite popular. But yeah, the Faraway Tree books were by far my absolute favourites. If for some reason you had a deprived childhood and you never read these, it's about 3 children who move away to a little house in the country, which is basically next to this forest, and one day they go exploring in the forest and find that it is home to all sorts of amazing magical creatures, including the Faraway Tree, which is this tree that they climb up and up and up, and on different levels of the tree different people live. So you've got the old washerwoman, you've got Moonface, you've got an angry little pixie, you've got this lovely little fairy, I can't remember her name now off the top of my head, Silky, I think it's Silky the fairy. And at the very, very top of the tree, there's a ladder to a different land, and it kind of rotates every day or every hour, or sometimes it's just completely random, and there's always a different land at the top of the Faraway Tree. And it's just, these stories, these books were just everything to me. It was a getaway, it was magical, it was so much fun. I wanted to visit the Faraway Tree, I wanted to visit the Enchanted Wood, just, amazing. I loved these so much. And yes, 20 years on, they still completely hold up. Next up, we're going to move on to some books I read when I was a little bit older. So these books are kind of the ones I read when I was maybe 6 or 7 or so. And then the next ones I'm going to talk about are the ones I read when I was kind of 9, 10, 11, 12, that kind of age. The first one I'm going to talk about is The Divide by Elizabeth Kay. I absolutely love this. It's been a long, long time since I read it, so I don't remember the specifics of it now. But basically, it's about this kid, and he's ill. I think maybe he has a heart condition or something. Either way, it's life-threatening. And he's I want to go on this holiday, kind of one last time. And he ends up at this place called The Divide, where he's kind of transported into this, magical kind of fantasy world with all these incredible creatures and, dragon-like animals and crazy birds and things. And like I say, I don't remember too much of the specifics, which is why I did actually buy this again on Amazon so I can read it again and kind of relive those childhood memories. But this was one of those books that I remember. It's going to sound stupid now after saying that, but when I first read it, it was one of those books that just stuck with me for days and weeks afterwards. it really drew me into the story, and I felt everything with the character, and I felt like the world was so, like, obviously not real, but it felt like so absorbing and so like it could be real. It was, I don't know, it was brilliant. I'm very excited to read this one again to see if it does still live up to kind of the magic and the fancy and the excitement and just those happy feelings it gave me when I was a kid. Next up, I want to talk about the series of books which basically meant I had no friends in school, and they are the Saga of Darren Shan by Darren Shan. So I really liked all of Darren Shan's books. He was a pretty fantastic kind of author of horror and scary books for kids. These books centered around vampires. He had others that were centered around demons, and they were brilliant. I really liked them. I thought they were really absorbing. The problem was, if you guys know from watching any of my other videos on my channel, I have quite a dry sense of humour, and I am very, very sarcastic. And I'm also not that socially aware. Like, I'm not that good at kind of gauging other people's reactions sometimes. So sometimes I'll be like, yeah, no, they're definitely going along with the joke, and people won't be, and they won't get me. Which was a real problem when I was a teenager. The point is, this one day, I thought everyone was going along with this joke of mine, and they were like, people start talking about vampires, basically, and I just started off on this, like, stupid, long monologue about, yeah, guys, do you not know that vampires are real? Yeah, no, according to these books, there's like 2 kinds of vampires, and some of them are good, and some of them are evil, and people were like, you don't really believe this, do you? And I thought they were just going along with the joke. I was like, yeah, no, of course I do, yeah. This stuff, it really happened, it's really real, I mean, it's in a book. And I was probably like getting into it and being like, oh, this is going to be hilarious, this is going to be great. But by the time I realised that no one else got that I was joking, it was kind of like too late and too far, and I was like, well, if I snap out of this now and say it's a joke, people are going to be like, oh, she's just going to cover her back. So basically, throughout the 8 years I was at that secondary school, everyone thought I was a freak who believed in vampires, because apparently I have the worst sense of humour and don't understand when people don't get my jokes. So on the one hand, great book, great stories, really enjoyed them. Also, probably stopped me having any friends. Or maybe I just stopped me having any friends by having a really terrible sense of humour. You know, whichever. On a happier note, some other books I read throughout that time included The Thief Lord, which I really, really liked. It's about some kids who are kind of basically 2 orphans roaming around Venice, and they meet this guy who is the Thief Lord, who kind of looks after kids who are stuck on their own, and like it's hard to explain, and I'm not really feeling too well, I'm sorry, so I'm kind of wanting to wrap this video up here. Basically, it's a really brilliant film. It has a really wonderful setting, being in Venice. It's really exciting, it's really engaging and enthralling, and I was really kind of like drawn into the atmosphere and the setting, and the kids living in this old theatre, I think, and I really, really enjoyed this as a kid. I do think they made a film out of it at some point, but I've never actually seen that, so I don't know if it's any good or not. But what I would say is that I always really enjoyed the book. I read it several times as a kid, and I really did like it. The last book I want to talk about now, just before I like die on you all, is The Hunted by Alex Shearer. This was a really great book. This was kind of my first sort of introduction to, I guess you could say, sort of dystopian fiction. Basically, it's set in this world where, I guess, natural-born kids are a real rarity, and there's a lot of people who are kind of artificially young. It's really kind of difficult to explain, and nothing's kind of said outright, but basically it follows this one kid, Taryn, who is basically one of the only real children left, and so because of that, he is very, very in demand, and he's kind of hired out as, like, you know, a child for the day to people who are childless, who can't be parents, because that's not a normal thing anymore. But also it means that people are after him, and, you know, there's bad stuff, and also time's running out before he grows into an adult and stuff, and there's a lot of stuff going on. It's a long, long time since I read it, so I can't remember the specifics, I can't remember how it ends, but what I do remember is, again, I read this over and over as a kid, and I really, really enjoyed it, and I really liked the world and the setting, and the kind of creepy, you know, dystopian atmosphere that was in it, and I really liked it, yeah. Just for a quick kind of like honourable mention, I just want to throw this in at the end and say, the series Unfortunate Event books by Lemony Snicket were my entire childhood. I loved them books so much. I discovered them, I think, just after the second book had come out, and then after that I bought all the other books as they came out, because I loved them so much. They were amazing. They do really live up as well to kind of the memories I had of them. So I read them again when I was 18, just before I went off to uni, and it really kind of shocked me just how much darker they were, and how there were these kind of more sinister undertones than I first kind of noticed when I was a kid reading them. But yeah, no, I thoroughly recommend them, but I don't have them here with me. They're still at my parents' house, but they're definitely some of the books I want to bring down next when I next visit them. Because I do miss them books. I had these beautiful hardcover versions. They were all absolutely gorgeous. I also got the kind of supplementary books to the series, like the Lemony Snicket unauthorized autobiography and the Beatrice letters and like other random little bits like that. I absolutely loved it. They were a really good series. But yeah, I know this has been a little bit different from my normal videos. I just kind of want to do something a little bit lighter today and a little bit happier, because I'm not feeling too well. I'm really sorry, and I think I'm just going to stop this here, edit this video quickly, upload it, and then go back to bed. And maybe cuddle a few stuffed animals, drink a hot chocolate, maybe beg Dan to go and buy me some chocolate, biscuits, just food in general, lots and lots of food. But yeah, once again, I'm sorry for the kind of lack of videos this week. It's been a weird week. I'm sorry I'm not really feeling or looking very good today. I didn't want to put proper makeup on, so you're just gonna have to deal with this with like eyebrows and an attempt at blush and some mascara. I know I look rough, I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm gonna stop rambling now. Let me know in the comments, what were your favourite books from childhood? Did you read any of these incredible books that I mentioned? I'm just gonna hold some up now to make me look cool. Did you read any of them? If you did, what did you think of them? Was I way off the mark? Did I miss some books that I should have read as a kid but didn't? Also, don't say Harry Potter, because I only read those books for the first time last year, and only because Dan made me, because he owns all of them. They're up there on our shelf. I'm not just pointing at nothing. I only read them last year, so they're not really like childhood books for me. And honestly, I'm a bit kind of take it or leave it with the series. Please don't judge me. Anyway, for now, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Just wanted to say a quick, huge thank you to everyone who is supporting me on Patreon this month, with a special thank you to these guys: Ewan Matthewson, Secular Reason, Daniel Clark, Lachie Scott, Jadeon Sheppard, and Matthew Meinema. You guys are all incredible. Everyone else is linked in the description below or on the end screen. You're all amazing, and just thank you so much.